Hello and welcome to Rogue Artisans and Crafters, two-time winner of the Southern Oregon Television Awards for Best Arts and Culture Show. I'm your host, Glamour Dave Nienow. We welcome you, our viewer, to our season of 2019 shows where we feature local artists and craftspeople here in Southern Oregon, and we talk to our featured artists about how they came to their art, what drives them as artists, find out stories behind their art process, and how their work as artists influences their lives. Today, we explore the art of clay and ceramics as a medium, and have the privilege of featuring local clay artist Jane Anderson. I met Jane at last fall's Clay Folk Show and really like the clay work that she produces. With such a limited production schedule for the show and the number of great artists in our area, it has taken until now to get Jane on the show. And so today I'm pleased to talk to Jane about her life as an artist and the work that she pursues today with her clay art. And so we welcome Jane to the show. So welcome.
Hi David, how are you?
Doing great. I'm happy to finally have you on the show.
Yeah.
So Jane, the first question I always ask each of my artists is, how long have you been working as a professional artist and what brought you into doing the work that you're doing?
Well, I started doing clay when I was a graduate student at the University of Hawaii.
Okay.
I was actually teaching in the English department, and the art building was right across the street.
Yeah.
And my mother was an artist. She was a painter, and she did portraits. And so in our household, seeing someone do artwork, particularly portraits, was something that was very common.
Yeah, okay.
We didn't have a television, and so my mother really encouraged us to look at different forms of expression.
Yeah.
And I actually started off as a poet.
Okay.
And then I got involved with the art department, took some sculpture classes with a great teacher by the name of Fred Roster, and he ignited that spark in me. And so then I started taking some ceramic classes, and as I taught and as I went back to school, I always sort of took a ceramics class. And then back 25 years ago, I moved to Oregon, and after finishing my teaching career, and we moved out into the country. We call our place Woodland Sun, which is the name of my pottery studio.
All right, okay.
And we set up this pottery studio there. And I started doing pottery, and then we adopted our daughter from the Ukraine, Anastasia, and that became sort of my full-time job. And then once she moved away, I started doing sculpture again, and I got interested in wood-fired sculpture in particular, thanks to the encouragement of Phil Fishwick, who was teaching at RCC.
Okay.
And I became aware of an opportunity to wood fire in a traditional Japanese kiln up in Elkton, Oregon.
Okay.
And that's what got me started in doing wood firing, which is, when we're looking at my pieces today, they're all wood fired.
Right, and I know that there's a wide variety of firing techniques, from my understanding of dealing with other clay artisans and stuff. So this firing technique that you're doing is a Japanese style?
Yes. What happens is Hiroshi Ogawa was the sensei, or the master ceramicist, and he built a kiln. The front part of it is a traditional anagama kiln, and it's 20 feet long. And the back part is a noborigama, which is a second kiln.
Okay.
And with what Hiroshi does is he gets a group of potters to come together who do wood firing, 10. We come together for a week. And the first thing we do is we take our pieces out of the kiln, out of our cars, and we put them on tables. And then we, if we're going to put glaze on them, we put glaze on them or slip. And then we have to wad them so they won't stick to the shelves, and then we load the kiln. The loading of the kiln itself takes 2 days.
Wow.
And where the piece is positioned matters. If your piece is right close to the firebox, you get more ash on your pieces. So when we look at something like this piece right here, you will see that there's more ash.
Right,
This side, though, was the one facing the fire. It's not, it hasn't glassified. This side, this piece was mounted like this. This side was up like this, and then what happens is the ash slips down over the piece, And where it's thinner, you get more of a shine
Okay.
and this texture. So there was actually no glaze on this piece.
Okay.
What actually put this coloration and design on the piece is the ash melting. The ash glassifies.
Okay. Well, we have a couple of video clips of the kiln in action that you
Right.
provided. So if the control room can bring up those video clips, and we'll take a look at those.
Straight one?
Correct.
And then this is a bundle, your little two. Okay, that's it.
Oh, okay. So let's start getting some bricks.
Wow.
Fire
all
this
of
piece is
these
100 hours.
2 or 3 more.
This is the side stoker. You actually have, when the kiln is at its highest temperature, this is when 3 people are stoking the kiln. 1 person in front and 2 people on the sides. And as you can see,
Yeah.
the flame licks out
Yeah,
at
it
you.
looks pretty intensely hot right there.
Yeah, 2,300 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty hot.
Yeah.
You want to have good protective gear on.
Yeah, I can
That's
imagine.
very important for your eyes and
Yeah.
the front of your body. Yes, it's very exciting.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, I've been around various forms of furnaces in my life, and you get, you definitely, it's amazing how strong that heat can generate out, to be felt from a distance. Right. So yeah, that has to be a pretty careful process, I would imagine.
It's a lot about teamwork.
Yeah.
And some of these people that fire with Hiroshi have been doing it for 20 years, such as Penelope Dews, who's an artist here, maybe 10, 15. And it's wonderful getting together with a group of other artists that
Yeah.
are interested in wood firing.
Yeah, and so that's been like your primary process for most of the work that you do for.
For the last 5 years, that's what I've been doing.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so in that firing process, is there like you talk about how things are placed in the kiln to generate the different effects. So are there like certain kind of like established placement patterns to generate certain kinds of looks, or is it still kind of like it's a mystery what you're going to
Well,
get?
everybody brings different sizes, shapes of pieces.
Right.
So it's always a mystery of how we're going to get all the pieces in.
Right.
We'll have a very long table, maybe a table 20 feet long and about 10 feet wide, and there it will be stacked
Right.
with pottery. And then everybody helps load the kiln, and everybody gets pieces in different spots of the kiln. So in some wood firings, the best potters get the best spots, but Hiroshi has been very good in allowing the potters that come to all have nice spots and
Right.
place their pieces. And you might request, I want this particular piece in the front of the kiln. I want this more in the second rank or third rank, depending on if it's a functional piece or not.
Right. Now, in preparing for bringing your pieces to be placed in the kiln, are there certain kinds of consistent formulations that you do in how you design your piece and prepare the piece before it goes in the kiln? Because I know, like, when I had John Dodaro on the show several months ago, we talked about how he has like certain formulas for how he coats his pieces and sets the coloration for them before they go into the kiln. So is the type of kiln that you're using, does it allow you to kind of establish certain kinds of formula styles to what we do when you prepare a piece, or is it still just kind of out there?
I do a lot of standing pieces.
Right.
Standing pieces are nice because they don't take up very much horizontal room. And often the standing pieces can be put between other pieces.
Right,
They
okay.
also often put my pieces on the side of the kiln because there's alleys. So I like doing standing pieces. One of the difficulties, though, is because of the intensity of the heat. Sometimes the pieces start to lean.
Oh, okay.
And I've actually had pieces fall into the firebox.
Uh-oh.
And actually, one of my favorite pieces is one that has fallen in, and I think you have a slide of it. It was very exciting. We have a week before when we finish our firing and when we open the kiln, because it takes that long for the kiln to cool down.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So everyone who had pieces next to mine were very nervous because they were scared that my piece was going to fall on their piece.
Yeah.
And actually, my piece did touch a couple other pieces. But the piece itself, I call my $10,000 piece because it will never be recreated.
Yeah, right, yeah. Well, we have a slideshow of images of some of your work
Right.
that we can talk about. So if the control room can start bringing up those images, and we'll talk about the different pieces.
This piece is called Seeking Balance. I use a lot of a circle form or a hemisphere form. To me, that suggests the idea of wholeness. A lot of my work is influenced by my spiritual practice and where I live. I sort of look at myself as an Oregon artist that deals with the subject of mindfulness. So in my life, I seek balance.
Right, okay. All right, so let's go on to the next.
This piece is called Dig Deep, and we have a tool, a pickaxe in the bottom. This is something that we found under our barn when we moved in it. And the top, again, is a circle, and it's about digging deep into yourself,
Right, okay.
again,
All right.
through meditation.
Yeah.
This piece is called In the Flow, and one of the things you can see here is the melting ash. And that front sphere, I put some copper foil on. The ash gets so hot and thick in this particular firing, it was a very hot firing, that it started to stream down, which is very unusual.
Okay, let's go on to the next.
This is called Together Under Oak. I work also a lot with the heart shape. Part of my practice is about opening your heart and connection. So this is a heart form under some oak that we harvested from our property.
Okay. All right, let's go on to the next.
This one is called Heart Song. Again, another heart image. Where you see the brown spots, the two brown spots, that is where the wadding was for the piece, because if these pieces do not have a little bit of wadding, which is like fire clay under it, they will stick to the shelves. So that's one thing different about wood firing, that you have to, when you put in a piece, you have to make sure that any surface that is touching this shelf you can throw away.
Okay.
So that takes a fair amount of time in the wood firing process.
All right, let's go on to the next.
This is called Listener. I'm meditating figure. Again, wood fired. I've been working a lot. I've started working with the human form. The importance of listening, which is another feature of mindfulness, and listening deeply to people.
Yeah.
This one I actually gave to my twin sister, Joan.
Okay.
I'm a practitioner of yoga, and this particular piece is the moon salutation. On the inside of the piece, you have the Om sign and then the different phases of the moon. And on the outside, starting from the top, is a series of moves that you do in a moon salutation. So this piece was fired sort of in the middle of the kiln.
Okay. All right, let's go on to the next.
This is the $10,000 piece.
Okay,
This
all right.
is the one that fell into the ash pit.
Yeah.
And I did add some, it's similar to the piece before it. It was done in a mold. However, when I do it in a mold, I always go in and add details. So this piece fell, like I said, fell into the ash pit, but it did survive, and I love this piece.
Yeah, okay.
I will never sell that piece.
Yeah, all right.
This is one of my earlier works when I first started doing wood firing. It's called Embrace the Mystery. My sense is where do our ideas come from? Where do things come from?
Yeah.
And to me, this was I see my stuff as being very archaeological.
Yeah.
We think of ourselves as being in a contemporary period, but in 2,000 years, we're going to be looked at as an old society.
Yeah.
So this sort of gets back to the mystery of the human spirit.
All right, and
This one is called Down the Rabbit Hole. My square forms represent screens, and if you could look more closely at the picture, like this piece right here, there's ones and zeros on it, suggesting the binary. And this is a critique of technology in our society. It seems like once we sit at a computer, we go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So this is my idea of the appropriate screen.
Okay, all right. Yeah, let's go on to the next.
This piece actually is in Japan right now in the Salmon Museum. Last year I went to Japan with Oregon Pottery Association in a sister city exhibit. Portland and Hokkaido have a sister city relationship, and it was their the Hokkaido Pottery Association's 50th anniversary. So we did a show together in Sapporo.
Oh, okay.
And I was selected to be one of the artists
Very cool.
to go to Japan. And this is the piece I took. And the Japanese were very interested in this piece, particularly in Hokkaido, because the salmon issue is a very important issue for them as well.
Yeah.
So if you look at that piece again, you would see that the center is an old forest scene. Outside that is macroinvertebrates, and then outside of that are the stages of the salmon, going from the baby salmon all the way over to the mother salmon laying eggs. So that's looking at the ecology.
Right, yeah. Well, you know, one of the comments that you made is about the archaeological kind of a look on one of your pieces, and that strikes me because when I met you at the Clay Folk Show last fall and saw your exhibit and saw your pieces on display then, that was one of the first thoughts to my mind was that because like some of the pieces then you had some like gold leaf kind of put at different elements on certain pieces, and it just gave me a sense that I was looking like something that could have been dug up out of an archaeological dig.
That's the way I wanted to look.
Yeah, and you know, and the pieces that you had on display, I saw like little elements of like Aztec Mayan kind of like an influence, and I didn't know if that was like deliberate or not, but I just thought, well, that's like some really cool stuff, and you know, and I love like, you know, Central American history and stuff, so I kind of recognized a little bit of that of what I saw then, and it just really attracted me to the style of what you do, because you just have like this kind of like this sense of old, you know, archaeological kind of ancient kind of a feel in some of the designs that I saw then, and
I think of it as being very primal.
Yeah.
I think as we become more technological, it's more important to turn inside.
Yeah.
And to think of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of my circle forms are based on living in Sri Lanka, where I taught. And one of the features of the Buddhist temples there is having a sunstone in front of the entrance, where they have depicted the different types of animals. So the circle form, for me, is universal. I think when we look at native peoples and we look at ancient societies, we see a lot of commonality.
Yeah.
And what I would like to think is if somebody dug up my pieces, they would think, wow, these are pieces from an ancient religion.
Yeah. And, you know, and also there's a certain rawness to the presentation of some of your work that I find an attraction compared to so many other kind of modern art pieces that are very slick, you know, in appearance, right? And
I call it style.
yeah,
It reminds me of one of my first ceramics teachers when he looked at my pot. I was not very good on the wheel. I said, oh, wow, that isn't very good. He says, you know what? That's the best pot you threw right now.
Yeah.
And people could always identify my work.
Yeah.
And that's what style is about.
That's
It isn't,
right.
It isn't
Exactly.
about polish.
That's right.
Actually, it's
about
about expression.
Self-expression and self-expression to a uniqueness of style that makes you recognizable, that makes you stand out, and you certainly do that very well. And the thing too, when I looked over your website, we've seen some of your heart-shaped forms, and in your website it looks like that's like a really strong element among the work that you do, and I've seen the heart form as a really popular artistic idea to explore with other artists that I've met here in the Valley. There's certain artists that I know that they just really love to like take that basic shape and really work it and express it in some really unique ways. And you're doing that as well, and I think that's kind of cool.
Well, I have an adopted daughter, like I said, Anastasia, and as she was growing up, she was always drawing these little hearts, and I went, oh, little hearts, can't we not have hearts? Can't you draw something else? And then I started to look at the heart form, and I noticed that it's very organic, and actually a friend of mine, Lorraine McDonald, who's a physician, when she looks at my work, she says, it's like looking at the inside of a human body, a lot of your shapes, because it has I like to think of it as a very organic feel. So when you look, this could be a heart.
Yeah.
It could also be a back.
Yeah.
It could also be buttocks. It could be many things.
Yes, yeah,
The heart form is a very soft and gentle form if you want to abstract it. So when I first did hearts, I would call them heart or what, depending on how you would see it. But I think love and care is really basic to the human spirit, and that's something that I like to think of my work depicts.
Yeah. Well, it's really wonderful, the style of what you do. Now, at this point, we're down to the last 5 minutes.
Okay.
So, if someone wants to like buy your work, what's the general price range of your work, and how do they go about contacting you to purchase work from you?
Well, that's a good question. My work is precious to me, and at this point, I would say my work is like between the $300 and $500 range.
Right, okay.
And the best way to do that would be to go to my website or my email addresses and to contact me. I'm not making artwork to sell. I'm making it as a communication tool, and I think it takes a certain person to like my artwork, which is fine. I always enjoy the people that I meet that like my artwork, and the truth is many people have different tastes.
Oh, yeah.
So the Clay Folk Show is also a good opportunity to see my work. I'll be there this year. That's the weekend before Thanksgiving.
Right.
And so I will have my work displayed there. So.
Yeah, well, because that's where I met you, and the Clay Folk Show certainly represents one of the great showcases of art in our region.
We have great artists, clay artists in the Southwest. Bonnie Morgan, Jim Robinson, Penelope Dews are just a few of the people. We are so lucky to have the talent that we have. We also have great ceramic technicians such as Dave Cornell. It's just amazing the resources we have in this area for clay, and I really feel very honored to be among these people.
Yeah. Now, it's the thing that struck me the very first time I went to the Clay Folk Show. I was just like it was kind of like an overwhelming experience to just literally find so many talented clay artisans in our area. And that's when I was just first starting the show, is when I went to the Clay Folk Show for the first time, and I was like going, there's so many people here that I want to feature, and I don't have enough production slots for the show to get them all done. And it's gotten to a point after the last Clay Folk Show, I'm thinking, I might have to just create just a Claymaster show, to kind of get to everyone that I want to feature.
It's not just though the clay that's displayed. It's great because they have artists talking about their work, about how they're making it. They have places for children to play with clay.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful event, and
Yeah.
it's free, and we get lots of people. People
Yeah.
line up the door, and if you haven't been there, folks,
Yeah,
you
definitely.
should definitely go. There's a
Yeah.
lot of affordable pottery there, and you
Yep.
get to meet the artists that make it
Yep.
and buy the work directly from them, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great show, and I encourage everyone watching to definitely check it out the next time it's coming up here, just the week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, Jane, I thank you very much for coming on to the show and to talk about your work. So I thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and I would like to thank my husband for supporting
Yeah,
me and doing my
okay.
ceramics.
Right.
He's a computer programmer, and he has done very well in supporting me in my work, and I love him, and I thank him very
Alrighty.
much. Thank you, Monty,
Yeah.
wherever you are.
Well, Rogue Valley, we reached the end of our show, Rogue Artisans and Crafters, and we thank you at home for joining us and learning about our featured artist, Jane Anderson. And we wish to thank Jane Anderson for agreeing to come onto the show to discuss her life as an artist. And so I'm your host, David Glamour Dave Nienow, and we will see you next time, Rogue Valley. Thank you for watching Rogue Artisans and Crafters. You can watch the show on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. and Thursday evenings at 11:30 p.m. on Channel 15 in Ashland and via charter cable on Channel 182. You can watch the show on demand at rvtv.sou.edu by searching for Rogue Artisans and Crafters. You can follow our show on Facebook by visiting and liking our show page. Just search for Rogue Artisans and Crafters. You can follow David Glamour Dave Nienow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search for Glamour Dave. If you like this show and wish to support David Glamour Dave Nienow and his show productions, you can visit his Patreon page at patreon.com/glamourdave to become a patron supporter. We want to thank our crew who have made it possible to put this program together, and to thank RVTV for their wonderful studio facility that allows us to produce shows such as this one. If you'd like to become a studio producer and create your own public access show, you can contact RVTV to learn how by calling 541-552-6898.